Hiya, I'm your host, Terry J. Aman, with Drew Brady, deee-lite, Deep Purple, Dorothy Fix, Dandy Warhols, Dave Matthews, Donna Duffy, Dolly Dio, Death Cab, Decemberists, Duran Duran, Def Leppard, Dokken, and Dido. This episode of VideoFuzzy the Soundtrack is brought to you by the letter D. Hit it! VideoFuzzy the Soundtrack. Episode 5. Wasn't the DJ spinning? Clearing up a little old business, I kind of made reference to this last episode. You can see it on VideoFuzzy's Instagram, but the Cure-themed party I was talking about, 406 Fascination Street, got conflated in my mind with our deee-lite Halloween party. It's been decades, so I'm not beating myself up over it, but I remember How You Say encountering this band's promotional EP co-release with the Heartthrob's 1990 Dreamtime release. Along with their world click single Groove Is in the Heart, I've got deee-lite tracks for What Is Love and the title track for this one, ESP, with the line, "Won't you listen to what the DJ's spinning? He's tapping to just what you're feeling." Title track. I'll talk more about deee-lite in my breakout section, but the line gets me properly, if a bit sneakily, into a conversation I've wanted to have with my DJ friend Drew Brady in Denver, who releases music on an almost daily basis, ranging from discordant to ethereal, depending on his mood. He's been making a name for himself in the music scene in Denver for years now. I've wanted to chat with him about his music, his process, himself, the whole darn thing. Drew, first off, welcome to VideoFuzzy the Soundtrack. You've told me you've been producing music since you were in high school with a concentration on ambient soundscapes. Talk to me first, what drew you into this style? What freedom it clearly gives you for expression? What are your creative influences?
Well, thank you for having me, first off. I'm not used to doing interviews to begin with, and I appreciate anybody who has an interest in not just the music, but kind of the background of it as well. So with where I started, it's always been one of those pieces of music, like ambient's been kind of something that my mom grew up listening to alongside kind of a strange mix of heavy metal and kind of pop music, and I guess a mix of a lot of that kind of influenced me to do the stuff that I do. So, but with the ambient stuff, it's more of like a head cleanser, so to speak. Mm-hmm. It kind of gets rid of the bad stuff and helps bring some good energy in, so.
Excellent. Well, it sounds like you're able to find some of that. You've got a pretty good range. We talk about you a little bit. I pretty much know you through chatting on Facebook, and you're a cutie. You're in your mid-30s. The ambient gay dad next door. You've probably been asked so often it's boring, but who is Drew Brady?
Well, I'm a music and history and science nerd. I am also very much into the paranormal as well. Mm-hmm. I definitely have a couple of eclectic hobbies here and there. Mm-hmm. I've been collecting guitar pedals for almost 15 years now. Mm-hmm. I started collecting records when I was in middle school as well. So my music taste can kind of go anywhere between like post-hardcore to classical music to radio pop music, that sort of thing. So music and audio has always been a big part of my life because I was classically trained on piano for about 16 years growing up as a kid. Mm-hmm. The weird part about me, though, is I've never really been able to fully read sheet music. Mm-hmm. So it's oftentimes just made off the top of my head and by muscle memory. And I also play by ear, which is helpful, too. So.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, lots of artists do that. That's where they come in. So that's fantastic. Talk to me about the making music in Denver and the creative environment and your evolution as an artist over this time that you've been talking about.
Well, it's hard to believe that I've been doing this for almost 20 years. Yeah. I often feel like it's been only a couple of days. I know that's kind of cliche to talk about it that way, but I have accomplished quite a bit from where I started in high school, and those early songs were just let's face it, they were actually terrible. And I'm grateful that people were encouraging of it, and happy that I was expressing myself in a way that wasn't harmful, obviously. Mm-hmm. But I guess as using those songs as like a jumping off board, I guess the sounds that came from that really kind of solidified what I'm doing now, so.
Well, you produce different music under different personas, including Brother Saturn, that's one I met under, and Chroma Drift, Orsica, Life After Earth, Castles to Build. Do you find yourself creating a song and then realize it slots better with one or the other? Or do you start out with a mindset of, I'm writing a Castle song, I'm writing an Orsica song? Tell me about your process there.
Honestly, it kind of comes after the idea that I put down. Half the time I don't really give myself a roadmap, and I just kind of record whenever the inspiration strikes, because I try not to force any of that out. Because sometimes when I force my ideas, it just doesn't come out as authentic as I would like it to be. Okay. So I always try and make it as raw and as humanistic as possible. So, but each project has a different kind of flair to it that the other one doesn't, and kind of different aspects of my personality, I guess.
And yeah, it kind of feels like, they do have a distinct flavor, I thought. I shared a link to your submission to NPR's Tiny Desk concert. I remember you said it was accepted. What was that like, putting that together? Have you heard anything back?
No, I unfortunately didn't win, but that video ended up getting about 100 views from that, so that's pretty exciting. That's the most views any of my videos have on there, so that's something I'm grateful for. So
that's awesome. Yeah, it's 100 views that you wouldn't have gotten. And I know that project's been going on for a while for them, and they draw from all kinds of different influences, so it's really cool to have been made part of it.
Yeah, I originally started it as a means of drowning out city noise, essentially. That's kind of where Brother Saturn was born. Uh-huh. I would come home after a long day of work, and I would basically just turn on my guitar and pedals and amp and kind of make myself a little ambient soundscape to kind of wind down to. And occasionally when I would have friends over, I would make them, little soundscapes here and there. And it was just sort of a way for me to socialize and express myself, and also to kind of have a comfortable living environment down there too. So, Well, you shared your sort of your workspace in that video. You were able to get a glimpse of that. It looked like a pretty comfortable space, so I thought it kind of made it your own. It took me a while to get there. It's this room had so much stuff in it beforehand that it's been a minute to get me to where I'm at now to make it a little bit of a comfortable recording space. So, but yeah, it's definitely cozy now, and I just need to remind myself to clean up the clutter every once in a while. That's my downfall, but.
I think that happens to all of us. Now, just to drill down into the specifics here, you released an LP with a bunch of really exciting track names, subliminal advertising as Castles to Build, including, "Oh, he had this special," or, "Doc, are you telling me this sucker is nuclear? Tomorrow's wedding is canceled due to the end of the world." And my favorite of the set, which was, "Be careful, this is a real page turner." Did you have that whole experience kind of mapped out in your head, or how it was going to progress through the tracks, or was that a discovery process in itself?
That project was created during COVID, and I ended up downloading some kind of obscure music apps that had free sound samples that you could kind of mess with and use at your whim and kind of do what you wanted with it, which is kind of neat. The app itself was sort of like a DJ app, but you could use all kinds of different samples, including adding your own. So it was essentially a way for me to just destroy sounds and kind of see what comes out of it.
Oh, yeah. Well, I thought those were really great track names. They were really evocative, but they didn't, when you listened to it, it wasn't like you were sampling a movie or anything. It was just sort of like an attitude, or kind of directed your mind maybe to hear something or how to hear it, I thought.
Well, it was during a period of time where to keep myself sane, I really just sat down and watched a ton of movies, and honestly, I don't know where the idea for the project came from to begin with, but it's here. I haven't done anything with it in a little while. Who knows, maybe I'll bring it back at some point, but... It
was fun, and I really thought it kind of stood out from your others because, Slow Dance by Brother Saturn is one of the first LPs of yours I heard. It released about 5 or 6 years ago. A very sparse, instrumental, contemplative, multi-layered piece. The titles talk about space themes. I don't really have a question, but I wondered if you'd talk a little bit about crafting that work.
Sure. I discovered a new keyboard at the time where it kind of allowed you to, speaking of the word space, it allowed you to kind of maneuver space in sound, and it was sort of a way for you to actually play with sound with your keyboards. I know you can do like that with a modulator wheel or like a pitch wheel, but this allows you to like actually move the sound around itself, which was really interesting. I unfortunately don't have that keyboard anymore because it kind of kicked the bucket, but hopefully I'll be able to buy one eventually again. But it was part of a music company that programs music recording software where you can not only just play a sound, but bring emotion and, I guess, movement to the sound itself is what I'm trying to say. So.
Yeah, it's fascinating. You can really hear some really interesting oral patterns move through those pieces, and it really kind of stood out. You also recently remastered a Brother Saturn release from 2013, 10-year anniversary release of Diary of Songs, Re-Life and Death. Decade of creative energy and vision later. How were you hearing these tracks, and what was your priority in revisiting those?
I honestly, it was one of those albums that I don't think really got the attention that it did at the time, and I kind of wanted to re-release it and kind of see what happened from there. And I've been kind of giving a lot of my older works a little bit of love that it didn't have at the time because it was very primitive as far as my mastering capabilities at the time. So,
of course, yeah, you're going to develop skills over 10 years, absolutely.
So now I've always done my own mastering, recording, production, and writing everything from home. I've never really done anything in a studio environment, and it's cathartic for me to do it myself, essentially. Mm-hmm. And if I were to try and tell someone else how to record a certain piece or something, or rather, like, it's very in the moment, and I can't really, teach something like that to somebody.
Or recapture an energy that you found and then followed through to a finished product like you'd found. Like some of these older works, yeah, absolutely. I think you're going to have some great discoveries as you're going through. One of my favorite pieces by you, I've mentioned this before, is Hyperspeed. You've released under Orsica. You more recently released Violet Eyes as a single under Brother Saturn. Talk to me about those. Those were really exciting pieces.
That project kind of came out of an idea where Chroma Drift is very much more hip-hop and down-tempo oriented, and Orsica definitely has a little bit of that, but I wanted it to kind of be my more, like, dance floor project, I guess.
Oh, Lord, you can tell, you really can tell those energies, yeah.
So it's been kind of difficult to kind of go back to that project, actually, because I'm like, I don't want it to sound cheesy, because you can easily go into that realm making that sort of music, and the thing that I try and develop first and foremost is an authentic idea and authentic emotion, and try and record that, because the worst kind of music, I think, is when you hear something and it just sounds plastic.
Oh, yeah. No, everything can end up sounding like everything else after. It is very, very true. I think yours does stand out. Personal opinion here, I'd say the widest range of listenability I encountered in your work were the initial tracks of Life After Earth, sort of a ambient trance score, then this half hour plus of Live from Earth, where the Racerhead f***ers live from the House of Where. I'll freely admit to you, I was not able to make it all the way through that one, but what were your goals with that release? Just documentation, or just because the first tracks are great, I loved them, maybe a bit muted, but overall a really pleasant experience, and then you get to Live from Earth. I really just can't, but talk to me about that range.
Well, that project, I wanted it to be kind of like an ambient punk project.
Oh, I think think it was. Oh, Lord, yeah, man.
And those are two things that you would never guess to be, together at all, ever. And I'm unfortunately not in contact with that kid anymore. But his energy and his own music was just out of this world, and I wanted to kind of encapsulate that in a kind of time capsule type thing at the time. And That was the last time I was actually able to perform there because they ended up shutting down that warehouse, unfortunately. So
that was a live performance. That was it was listed as live from where?
Because in high school, I ended up starting out doing a kind of garage rock punk music with my best friend Matt. So I've always wanted to eventually have a punk band, but I never had the energy for it.
Well, you wouldn't think there was a lot of intersection between punk and ambient. So I thought, yeah, that was a cool like aspiration. I thought
because there's post rock music, which is like orchestral rock music, but without vocals a lot of the time, and just making classical music or, classically inspired music just with, rock instruments and making things not sound like themselves. And that's kind of what inspires me to do my own music. So, especially with the guitar stuff, like with my live performances now, I like to make it not sound like a guitar by the end of my set. And I've been kind of toying with an idea of utilizing at least 3 to 4 different loopers at once, and sort of doing like emulating a tape loop type of thing, but like it would be an endless kind of loop sort of thing, because the pedals that I have, it allows you to do infinite overdubs and everything. So
that's phenomenal. Quick break in here. Interviewer Terry had no idea. A few days after recording this, Drew shared a video of himself using this technique, and with his kind permission, I'll share a clip of that here. Enjoy. Looped audio soundscape by Denver DJ Drew Brady. I thought, first I want to say thank you so much for your time. I feel like I got a good sense of who you are as an artist and your work here. I just want to say if there's anything I forgot to ask, anything you'd want to let VideoFuzzy the Soundtrack fans know about, please share.
The only thing that I have off the top of my head at the moment is I'm also doing my very first record store performance in July at Wax Trax Records in downtown Denver. It's one of the historic record stores in town too, which I'm excited about. So.
Oh, yeah, I was going to say, I found your work in Apple Music and in Bandcamp, and I was going to ask where people can find Drew Brady music. Probably going to have some at that performance, so...
Yeah, I've got a handful of CDs and tapes and some T-shirts, and definitely a lot of merch at the moment, especially leftover from, the plague year, of course.
And you do your own artwork. That was one of the things I completely forgot to ask about, was some of the artwork that you do. You're a visual artist as well.
Yep, I do most of my own graphic design work, and unless otherwise noted, because I always make sure to credit everything. I have friends that help out with album art, which I often do, and I like to make my art and music kind of, what's the word I'm looking for, interactive. So it's not just me, putting stuff out, it's, interacting with other people and letting them experience it too. I also do visual art as well, like just with film clips, and I started doing that in high school as well, and I actually got a couple film awards for that. And over the last 5 or so years, I ended up doing an intro piece for a Solomon Ski Company documentary, which I have to pinch myself for because it's got, the science aspect and climate change aspect and all of those things definitely for, keeping on the up and up, so.
Oh, for sure. Hey, no, that's awesome. I want to thank you so much for your time, your talent, the creative energy I've discovered just spending some time with your craft. And I wanted to thank you for sharing some of that here with me today. Drew Brady, Denver DJ, Chroma Drift, Orsica, Castles to Build After Earth, the whole Saturn Brotherhood. All my best to you, man.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Influences. I've got more ambient music in my collection than I think I ever anticipated I would. Closest I've had in my collection up till now is 1990s chantcore from Enigma, and probably whatever it was Suzanne Vega was doing. But it's nice when you just need some non-intrusive energy going on in the background while you're writing or cleaning or whatever's going on. I feel like Drew gave me a good introduction to work like my friend Mark Mason of the Cowboy Junkies poster recently produced an hour of. Now there's a 12-hour version of very calming white noise called Glacier he released as Ghost Lodge music on his Leonard Mason YouTube channel. I didn't add it to my collection, but I'll include the links in my show notes. Nice one, Leonard. Top influence for this set, influences being bands with entire LPs in my collection. Top influence is one of the older cassettes in my collection, House of Blue Light by Deep Purple. What I'd have considered something of an outlier. I don't know when I got it, but it was released in 1987, well into the band's career. The gritty vocals and searing keyboard dress up a mature approach to hard rock that, again, nothing I wasn't listening to at the time. I think Deep Purple would not have been out of place on the station playing Whitesnake's Still in the Night, Pink Floyd's The Wall, or most anything by Styx, really, but it stands out in my collection for, I can't say why exactly, but I don't have a lot of music like this. I want to say country vibe, but not one song claims it. Black and White comes closest for that harmonica opening, but the hard rock bona fides are solid. Taken as a whole, you've got the Storyland Ballad of Mitzi Dupree, you've got the endless, relentless pursuit of Call of the Wild, you've got towering social critique of Strange Ways, and every aspect of these tracks that my ear is hearing as country rejects the premise. Black and White is a rock song. It rocks. I got a joker up my sleeve. I know what to believe. It ain't right just because it's in black and white. Black and white. As well as, is this the news of the world? It's just a pretty girl. She's all the news that's fit to print. Black and white, black and white. I'd considered making Spanish Archer my title track for this set, and I think it would have been fine. The song tracks a relationship struggling through a dark patch. The singer suspects infidelity. Is there someone somewhere waiting in the wings to take my place? Let's not drag it out like a Cagney death scene. In the season of change, it's not hard to explain at all. Like the leaves on the trees have fallen. As you turn, don't look away. The Spanish Archer's gonna make you pay. Reference Spanish Archer was confusing to me. I guess it's British slang for getting fired, so the singer feels he's being replaced. Given elbow, I guess, doesn't translate perfectly. Mostly I enjoy the raw, relatable emotion and music from a band that, by the time I'd encountered them, were singing from a place of maturity I hadn't grown into yet, but can appreciate more and more as the years go on. No, I noticed I have their 1978 entry Hush in here, which I'm not quite sure when I added that, but it's really cool to encounter it. They were going crazy on that Hammond organ through the bridge for that, and crafted a truly iconic sound. Fun find. Oh, then I found this one. Dorothy Fix, described as local to New York Mills. Minnesota, Michael Dagan on guitar and Amber Fletchock on keys. It's a fascinating approach to sound. They have 2 music credits on IMDb for Hidden Hearts and 50 States, which did pose some difficulties for my Studio Murphy Underconnections challenge, but why the hell not? Because that's a different podcast, and neither of these movies are in my collection. Technicalities! Let's run this thing. Hidden Hearts from 2009 was a 15-minute short that only credits 2 actors, and only one of them had a photo, so I was nervous. Camilla Lay was in exactly 7 things, and I was nonplussed, but one of those things, Billy Club, featured Mark Metcalf, the Master from Buffy the Vampire Slayer, who was in Playback with Christian Slater, who was in The West Wing with everyone from Studio 60. The other actor was Bubba Wyler, who was in the Ryan Murphy production of Pose, so yeah, no daylight there at all, actually. What was I worried? The other, 50 States, was a 2008 indie short without a cover graphic even, and neither cast member credited had photos, which suggest a very indie production indeed. Emma Frey has 1 acting credit, which makes for a hard connection to build from. The other, Charlie Ramsey, was a bit more prolific. I found him credited alongside Lena Karishnikal in a few things, including The Long December. Karishnikal is in the Quantum Leap reboot with Walter Perez from Ryan Murphy's 911 Lone Star, and oh my god, that took some digging. Of course, Karishnikal was in the TV production of Get Shorty with Steven Weber of Studio 60, so I probably just made it more difficult than I needed to. 1,000 years ago now, I was talking about the artists, though, Dorothy Fix. Dorothy's got 1 O if you're looking, and it's not pronounced Drothy Fix, so that should help. The CD I received for review in 2005, Yourself, I ripped to my music collection so as to listen to it, and I don't know what I was listening to. I was predisposed to judge it harshly, but there are a few tracks on it you could call songs. The band reports live performances for at least another 10 years, playing into 2015, but guitarist Michael Dagan has been posting poetry since 2016 at the Abandoned Scout Camp blog. He's got over 300 poems posted there as recently as May of this year. Scroll back beyond poem entry number 1, and there are newsletter entries and some discussions that small rural towns have been having since forever. To wit, how you going to keep them down on the farm after they see Paris? We were talking about this when I was covering life in Bottineau County in the 1990s. People are talking about this now. He argued in 2014 that with the internet, young people can stay connected to the world and be within easy driving distance of big cities and still enjoy small-town life. And all of this is easier to talk about than their music, which surprisingly remains neither explored nor examined on his blog either. The movie credits I discussed dated from about 2008 and 2009, a few years after this release. I scrolled back. The first blog entry on Abandoned Scout Camp dates from 2011 and invites readers to create their own reality, one perhaps in which mashups between 1970s-era exercise records, imprecise guitar chords, and atonal singing vocalizations are songs. It doesn't matter that actually you kind of like In the Country, Dive In, You Better Believe It, and New Instrumental from their 2005 release Yourself. As far as I can tell, you can't buy them anywhere, but there are a handful of Dorothy Fix tracks hosted on SoundCloud, where I noticed when I logged in as myself there was a tiny flurry of activity around this podcast of which I was entirely unaware, and that I had a follower. Thank you, Patricia. Woot! And you, Cynthia and Timothy, thanks for the episode reposts, and to Patricia, Chris, Connell, and Timothy for the likes. Also, I added episode 1 because it wasn't in the lineup, and the next day it had a half a dozen likes and a repost, so to Sierra, Lance, Franks, Gretchen, and Oblivion Selects, thank you very much for your support. Cannot stay on topic. Okay, look, you hear a mild frizzle of static from contact with the vinyl exercise record, and there's some music I believe is original to the band that flows underneath and meshes with the instruction to breathe in and out. The exercise routine floats into the background, and Michael Dagan's low, indifferent vocals take center stage, along with guitar riffs that feel raw, live, and in the moment, but could benefit from more rehearsal. I honestly can't tell you if I reviewed this CD or not at the time, but while it's certainly an audio experience, and a not entirely unpleasant one even, I can't imagine I'd recommended it. The best tracks are mildly entertaining as novelty, if a bit unnerving. The worst, well, I do not give 2-star ratings lately, and that's where over half of them ended up. Like I said, some of the titles are worth a look, but 7 of the 12 tracks are 2 stars, so, well, assuming you can find them in the first place, you know what you're in for. Along with SoundCloud entries, there's a few videos on YouTube. The latest one posted within the last month or so, but all recordings for about 15 years years ago. The links are in my show notes, so enjoy. Or at least enjoy. This next set feels like it was a mid-aughts process piece. A friend of mine from the Angel chat, Aunt Arlene, started cleverly pairing together clips from the Buffyverse with pop songs and creating fan vids. And I was like, oh, that's clever, let me try that. Mine had issues, especially since I could not get the music pulled in properly for at least the first few. Hers, on the other hand, were and continue to be quite good, and I've included a link to one of my favorites in my show notes. Enjoy. I remember I built one I had to completely scrap because the audio was especially poor, but it involved Veronica Mars and Used to Be Friends by the Dandy Warhols. I've since figured out a lot more about editing audio, so I wish I still had it around. There was a clip I created to accompany episode 32 of my other podcast that could remind a person of the song, but you can track that down on your own. A long time ago, we used to be friends, but I haven't thought of you lately at all. Yeah, no, not all of it. If ever again, a greeting I send to you, short and sweet to the soul I intend. Come on now, honey, bring it on, yeah. Just remember me when we used to be friends. A long time ago, we used to be friends. A long time ago, we used to be friends. And other stuff, actually. My favorite music video from them hasn't turned up yet in my VideoFuzzy project, but I'm sure I have them singing Not If You Were the Last Junkie on Earth. I never thought you'd be a junkie because heroin is so passé. But today, if you think that I don't know about depression and emotional pain, you're insane, or you're a fool who hasn't paid attention to a word that I say. In a way, I can't help but feel responsible. I always knew that you were insane with your pain, but I never thought you'd be a junkie because heroin is so passé. Heroin is so passé. Heroin is so passé. The video is fantastic. It's a game show pastiche with a hyperactive host, a beautiful model showing them what they've won, including sickness, withdrawals, car accidents, and untimely death. The song itself is so perky and upbeat. It's a perfect sort of late 90s vibe. I think Third Eye Blind was actively promoting crystal meth around this time. Weird. The Dandy Warhols are in my collection with the single Used to Be Friends off their Welcome to the Monkey House release, and the Come Down LP, which, along with Junkie, I've got Hard On for Jesus, Minnesota, and Every Day Should Be a Holiday. Oh, and Cool as Kim Deal, which is a really fun song I used to know the reference. No, Google is telling me I really do not. Hey, whoever she is, she's mentioned a song in a Dinky Music podcast, so watch that star soar. I have got so much Duran Duran, and I have so little to say about them. Of course, I am thrilled stupid to have View to a Kill and Rio, a few different versions of Ordinary World. I've got Hungry Like the Woofy, Girls on Film, The Reflex, Is There Something I Should Know, and weirdly enough, The Union of the Snake, which is such a dark, weird vibe, but catchy. Maybe not that weird. I mean, all of these are off their greatest hits collection, and I guess when I was replacing my lost tracks, I determined there were so many songs like this voice of the 80s band that I wanted in my collection. I just bought the whole collection. Seriously though, you're Duran Duran, and you can't come up with a better compilation title than Greatest? But that is clear and concise. Just, no man, you do you. Greatest by Duran Duran. 19 tracks. Goodest? I'm not going to. Not If You Were the Last Duran on Earth. Panic at the Strobe Light. View to a Duran. I got nothing. Please name me now. If anyone has a better title for Duran Duran's greatest compilation, my inbox is open. TJAman1970 at yahoo.com. Let's help some aging pop stars out a little. Closing out this segment, I have a perfectly charming little compilation by Dido called No Angel. The title track is lovely. Thank You is a beautiful commentary on a relationship. Sort of the anti-Spanish Archer. There's a little callback there. Woman catalogs a perfectly wretched day. Cold tea, late for work. Comes home soaked through from the rain, but because her partner is there caring for her, it's in fact the best day of her life. And I want to thank you for giving me the best day of my life. only to be with you is giving me the best day of my life. Which is very sweet. I think Dido stood out for me more after she collaborated with the Eminem track Stan about a fan who fatally subsumes his identity into a pop star fantasy, and what I think is the basis for the Evanescence song Taking Over Me, which is another one of those, if you parse the lyrics out, reads fan obsession. And I could talk about Eminem and Evanescence later, but whenever I got the Dido CD, late 90s, early aughts maybe, the CD came out in 1999, it's an enjoyable set of songs and energies. Oh, especially Hunter, a truly exploratory piece about a woman restless in a relationship no longer of interest. If you were a king up there on your throne, would you be wise enough to let me go? For this queen you think you own wants to be a hunter again. I want to see the world alone again, to take a chance on life again. So let me go, let me leave. For the crown you placed upon my head feels too heavy now, and I don't know what to say to you. I'll smile anyhow. All the time I'm thinking, I want to be a hunter again. I want to see the world alone again, to take a chance on life again. So let me go. Incredible. For when the best day of your life starts wearing a little thin, happy go hunting. Lost Tracks. Oh, Lost Tracks. I lost a lot of music by D artists, and when I added it back, I added much more. I already mentioned pulling in Greatest by Duran Duran, mostly because from the couple few I'd had, I knew I wanted many more. I wasn't even that big a fan at the time, but the band evokes the music of high school-aged me in some truly iconic ways, and having it in my collection as a touchstone, I'm happy to expand. Same era, Maneater showed up in this set because it was released under Daryl Hall and Hall Oates, so my Apple Music library insists I pay attention to these people as individuals with first names, but to me they're just Hall and Oates. See also Debbie Gibson's ever so heartfelt Foolish Beat, which 16-year-old me thought was the deepest, bestest song anyone had ever sung ever. Shut up. Dusty Springfield's Son of a Preacher Man I added because Pulp Fiction, but not right away. The fact that it went missing means I bought it between 2006 and 2009, and the movie I'm certain I saw when it came out in the late 90s. Same with Iko Iko by the Dixie Cups. Purchase absolutely inspired by the song's appearance in Rain Man. Duffy's mid-aughts reimagination of 1950s-era pop was fun, as was, I always loved Dr. Hook's 1972 cover of the Rolling Stone. Dolly Parton is having a moment right now, since also at least the 1970s. There's been a 9 to 5 musical. She was honored by the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Her imagination library is responsible for children worldwide having access to books of their own regardless of income. She's got Dollywood merchandising looking amazing for any age in her 70s, and a new LP coming out this fall. I'll touch on that more in a bit here. Me tracking down and reacquiring Jolene, Love is Like a Butterfly, I Will Always Love You, and her brilliant cover of Stairway to Heaven won't even register, but I do love her energy. She seems to be a force of kindness in this world, and I'd love for that to just propagate endlessly. I was so happy to bring Bootylicious back into my collection, which otherwise has no Beyonce. None. I love her. I love Single Ladies. I have enjoyed so much of her music over the years, but I've never added any of it to my collection, with the exception of this single Destiny's Child put out in the late 90s and the telephone collaboration she put together with Lady Gaga, but obviously haven't gotten to that yet. Other hip-hop vibes I bought Dollars, Who the Fuck Is That? Who the Fuck Is That? Late aughts, but it misplaced itself, so here it is again. Then also of a vibe, I got a few by the hopelessly thought-ridden poets of Death Cab for Cutie and the Decemberists, which call back to media inspirations. Not sure I'd ever even heard of them. Mad Men's third season hadn't opened with the Infanta, and I was like, Is this period? Who is this by? I've never heard of this song. Well, no, it was contemporary, mid-aughts, and introduced me to the band, but a truly bold musical choice for a show otherwise so drenched in mid-century energies. The inclusion of this piece was like Baz Luhrmann's Moulin Rouge, complete anachronism, but by that very token, the energy the piece hoped to evoke was further emphasized. Along with the Infanta, I reacquired The Sporting Life and Mariner's Revenge, and because I was clicking around enjoying things, Eli the Barrow Boy seemed like a sweet storyteller. I'll close out this set with a comment on Dandy Warhols, who also skate boundaries between insightful and experimental and listenable. Whenever they entered my collection, I probably bought Come Down when I added Used to Be Friends as a single. The timing around Veronica Mars fits. This late 90s sophomore effort sounds like a band with solid ideas looking for ways to express them. Hard On for Jesus is avant pop. Every Day Should Be a Holiday is fountains of Wayne levels of popcore sensibilities. Then you get the droning I Love You and whatever the hell Pete International Airport is meant to be. And I'm like, what? Still, any compilation, you get what you get, and on balance, I'm happy to have it all back in my collection. Breakouts. For breakouts, bands with multiple entries in my collection. 1,000 years ago now, I mentioned something about deee-lite. I've got to say, I need more deee-lite in my life. I need more people just being happy and positive in my life. Walked by a coworker and she said, "Don't smile or anything." I told her not to be that person, but also mentioned to my supervisor, who's the correct response to this is, "You work in the same place I do." True enough, and at the time I was managing a cartload of freshly cleaned equipment and 3 IV poles, all of which wanted to tip over, so I was concentrating. That's not the point. The point is deee-lite, man. We need more deee-lite. We need more B-52s. We need zen'd out psychedelic bliss, more loving on each other. I remember watching the video for Groove is in the Heart with friends in college. I talked to him on last night, my artist friend Drew Bronberger, who pointed out the video has flashing hearts flying all over the place, and if that's subliminal messaging, then that's what it should be for. I don't cultivate a lot of that kind of music. I've got some Pharrell, I got some John Batiste, I've got the Blenders country music flavored cover of Bobby McFerrin's Don't Worry, Be Happy in my collection. I really need to be listening to every single day because it's awesome. A lot of music in my collection is moody, kind of broody, mostly positive, but I spent enough years alone and sad that that's the music that either spoke to me or reinforced a feedback loop. Hard to know right now. Though, along with Groove is in the Heart, I've also got the title track for this set. The lyric, as I said up there, is from their ESP release. Won't you listen to what the DJ's spinning? He's tapping into just what you're feeling. That one has what sounds like old-time movie dialogue looped in, a troubled scientist weighing possibilities. Supernatural. Perhaps. Supernatural. Perhaps. Google suggests it's from a 1934 Boris Karloff piece called Black Cat, the line uttered by Bela Lugosi as Dr. Vedegast. I've not encountered this film adaptation of apparently Edgar Allan Poe's story, but that was a fun little set of connections to encounter here. And a third one by them, What is Love, is a lot of Lady Miss Keir purring positivity over house music. Ooh la 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 la. How do you say de-groovy? How do you say deee-lite? How do you say de-gorgeous? Just a whole lot of that, except fun. And yeah, I could use a whole lot more of that in my life. Several other entries, along with what's in my collection. Dolly's got a new single out from her Rockstar LP. I added it to my collection. It's World on Fire. I feel like actually Rib McEntire sang it better in her cover of Brenda K. Starr's 1991 What If. This both sidesing thing that Dolly's doing in World on Fire, focused on nameless politicians, sidesteps actual suffering in our world. She's just a singer, I'm just a podcaster, what can we... You've got a platform, Dolly. Billions of fans worldwide. Say it. Say the thing. Don't get me started on politics. How we gonna live in a world like this? Greedy politicians, present and past, wouldn't know the truth if it bit them in the ass. Okay. So, you got your sass up. Speak some. Speak some truth. If liar, the world's on fire, who's fueling it? This kind of vague booking allows everyone to think you're on their side. Case in point, you call out marching in the streets, but where? Charlotte? Portland? J6? If you do mean Portland, you call out the protests, but not the injustice they're protesting. Everyone isn't lying, Dolly, and you know this. You've invested so many resources, your own time and treasure, trying to address the imbalances. Children were ripped from their parents, Dolly, who haven't been reunited and may never be. Families in this country are one bad biopsy from ruin. School children gunned down and almost daily, but you won't dare call out, again, for one example, irreligious hypocrisy. You invoke God's name in your song, but not his followers' drumbeat assault on the civil liberties of people's lives. The LGBTQ fans, your fans who you claim to love, attacked daily in state houses. Laws passed immiserating lives. It's not your fault it's happening. But if you're going to take a stand, well, my heavens, Miss Parton, you're never going to have a larger platform than you have right now. Go right ahead and take one. Dolly Parton's double LP Rockstar drops in November, available for pre-order. Check it out. Moving right along, oh hey, where'd that soapbox come from? Moving right along, I love the energy of the Dave Matthews band pieces. I've got Bartender and Two Step, which is a solid tribute to commitment and togetherness and love. Hey, my love, you come to me like wine comes to a mouth grown tired of water all the time. You quench my heart and quench my mind. Oh well, celebrate we will, 'cause life is short and sweet for certain. Hey, we climb on 2 by 2 to be sure these days continue. Things we cannot change. 8 billion people, Dave. We're worried about days continuing in carrying capacity. Maybe climb on a little less often. Farming's still trying to catch up, and we're complaining about that now. I'll get to Diesel's signal in a bit here. Closing out this set with a few from my high school days, I tracked down a couple here by Def Leppard, especially Rocket, their tribute to influences of bands they loved, and Dawkins in here with In My Dreams, cool entry. And then I've got a couple by Dio. Ronnie James Dio, R.I.P. I talked about Dio some in episode 60 of Video Fuzzy, but for sure the songs are better than the videos. Holy Diver and Rainbow in the Dark are both high concept, high energy, almost orchestral vibes with theatrical imagery, high drama. Yeah, I think the current band Ghost might have heard a bit of Ronnie James Dio when they were getting their sound put together. When there's lightning, you know it always brings me down. 'Cause it's free and I see that it's me who's lost and never found. I cry out for magic. I feel it dancing in the light. It was cold, I lost my hold to the shadows of the night. No sign of the morning coming, you've been left on your own, like a rainbow in the dark. A rainbow in the dark. Dio holds its own alongside other bands that would be playing on that radio station. Would be Iron Maiden, Metallica, I mentioned Ghost. They are an absolute trip, but hold their own. Dark, fun, great hook, good, listenable songs. I love that I've got these. Sparks. In Sparks, artists who make one appearance in my collection. I mentioned Diesel Automatic up there singing They Don't Care About Us, songs from 10 years back, but it's a brand spanking new addition to my music collection. I encountered it when I was adding Michael Jackson's song by that name, which, oh hey, deep cut. I had a chance to listen to Beat It on the 80s station not too long ago, and the callback riff made in his version of They Don't Care About Us I heard at the end of Blue Cantrell's Hit 'Em Up Style. He was using that electric guitar riff in Beat It as well. You can hear it in the bridge. It was very cool. Very, very cool tracks to their career. Anyway, Diesel Automatic, They Don't Care About Us. Well worth a listen. They cram a lot of ideas into this piece. It's all worth considering. It's kinda true you can float through our education system and never develop the tools for critical thinking. I suppose it's possible fluoridating water supplies does anything at all other than strengthen teeth, and they upset with genetically modified farming, despite our planet going from 2.5 billion people in the 1950s, an average life expectancy of 45, to 8 billion people today living on average into our 70s, and every single one of us wanting, food. I guess when you look at it that way, acknowledgement of a common humanity comes with admissions and obligations, but we can't even distribute water equitably among those needing to drink it and those needing to grow stuff. The song talks about mass market media manipulation, advertising, and influencers keeping us distracted while we're milked and bilked and robbed and lied to. See, that's where I'm at. I feel like concentrating wealth and resources into a vanishingly small number of hands is the real issue. They go off on divisions based on religion and politics, which we need to pay attention. We need to pay attention when our leaders are defining marginalized communities, slapping labels on other people as our enemy, and challenge that us versus them mindset for what it is. Keep us fighting each other while robbing us hand over fist. While I disagree with a number of the examples touched on in the song, I respect this artist's take that if you don't believe him, go look it up. The song talks about we're enslaved by debt, immiserated by poor diet and lack of access to health care, and mind controlled by media. Lack of critical thinking skills got us a lot of the way down the road on which we happen to find ourselves, and we can always decide to take a different path. As for Diesel Automatic, looks like they've got dozens of tracks available on their site for free or by donation, which absolutely that is one way to sidestep the corporate profit model, though they're also available at Apple Music, Spotify, and Amazon as well. That's DISL Automatic, link in my show notes. Keeping with that energy, I enjoyed the Disturbed cover of Genesis's Land of Confusion. The rougher vocals are the right mood for the remake. Dixie Chicks, now the Chicks, 2006 release of Not Ready to Make Nice, just a brief callback on my Dolly Parton comments, a response to the media reaction to their opposition to the war on terror, standing up to public pressure and death threats, as Demi Lovato sings in the one track I have by her. What's wrong with being confident? Love that. Other tracks in this set include one I encountered in the 5th season of Joss Whedon's Angel, the Detroit Cobras singing Hey Sailor, playing through harmony, getting ready for her day in harm's way. Well worth tracking down. Other ads from media. I enjoyed the version of Dry Edge's Beethoven Virus I heard when Ralph was killing it on Dance Dance Revolution. I think I've got Dia Frampton's cover of R.E.M's Losing My Religion from her performance on The Voice. Son of a Preacher Man I mentioned absolutely in here because Pulp Fiction. Donna Summer's Hot Stuff because Full Monty. And, covers. I've got Doxology's version of Eleanor Rigby. Just nice. I did add Yankee Rose by David Lee Roth at some point, along with some dramatic music by Dylan, and I'll just close this all out here with Dwayne Johnson's You're Welcome, which I'm not even going to be inspired by because Disney. And that'll wrap us up for the D's. Thanks again to my friend DJ Drew from Denver, and thanks to you all for checking in on me as I poke around in my music collection. And quick reminder, I was looking for alternate suggestions for titles for Duran Duran's greatest LP. You can drop those in my email. As always, anything that might have reminded anyone of singing in this or any VideoFuzzy production, let me assure you that it wasn't. Any low-bar karaoke attempts you may have encountered in this tiny project would have only been included for illustrative purposes as part of fair use review, certainly weren't meant to infringe on anyone's licensure or copyright. Go forth, buy songs that support the artists you love. Meanwhile, please add, follow, and subscribe to VideoFuzzy the Soundtrack wherever you get your podcasts, and with any questions, comments, or artist suggestions, please contact me through my show notes or by email at tjam1970@yahoo.com. For VideoFuzzy the Soundtrack, I'm Terry J. Aman. Happy listening.